Hey guys, another chapter 3 section 4 video here. This time we're going to focus on what types of slopes do lines have. So keyword today is slope. Slope is another word in algebra that we use for the growth number. So when we're graphing lines, one of the things we like to do is we like to look at that growth of that line and decide, is it a large growth or is it a small growth? Is it a negative growth? And we often just refer to that as the slope of the line. So for our notes today, we're going to do one problem, and you're going to need some space, and you're going to want to be nice and neat to make this turn out good. I might even recommend a couple of colored pens or pencils to really highlight different parts of this graph that we're going to do. So here's the plan. We are going to plot a series of points on a graph. We're going to plot this A, B, C, D, E, F on a graph. But we're not going to connect them yet. So if you look at the numbers over here, you can see we kind of have a wide range. I think 6 might be our biggest number, so we got to make sure we get up to 6 on our graph. So grab a ruler and start setting up a big graph. I'm going to go something like this, like a 10 by 10 graph. Up to positive 10, down to negative 10, and out to 10, and back to negative 10. And like always, pause the video if I go fast on this graphing stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these points over here and we're going to put them on our graph. And we're going to label them with their letters, their corresponding letter. So A is going to go at -3 and 6, which would be over here and up. Now, I would like you to pause the video and plot all the points yourself first, and then you can see if you got them in the right spot. So go ahead and try. Okay, so hopefully you've plotted all of your points and labeled them. You can check and see if you got them in the right spot now. So here's A up at -3 and 6. B would be over here at 3, 4. C is down here on the x-axis at 4, 0. Here's D at 3, -4. And then E is over here at -5 and 0. And F is at 0, -2, which is down here. Okay, so your graph and my graph should look pretty similar. So now here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our ruler and we're going to draw a line that passes through A and B. We're going to connect those 2 points. And we're going to measure the slope of this line. What is its slope? What is its growth number? We're going to do that using something we've learned in prior videos, and that is the growth triangle. We're going to measure rise and run. So between A and B, I'm going to create this triangle. But before I do, off to the side of my notes, I'm going to write a little note here that we are focusing on line AB. Now notice I put this double arrow line up above it. This is kind of a geometry notation that next year when you're in a geometry class, you're going to need to know. When you see this, you read it out loud as line AB. It's kind of a shortcut instead of having to write the word line. So line AB. And we're going to look at line AB first. That's going to be our focus. So going to A and B, I'm going to make my nice little growth triangle here, connecting my points. I can shade my triangle in, kind of make it dark, and then I'm going to measure that rise and that run. The rise is the vertical up and down, and it looks like I'm dropping down for my rise, so it looks like a negative number is going to represent that rise. And my run is all the way across. So we're going to have to count that out. So it looks like it goes down 2 units. If you correctly graphed, you should have the same thing, down 2. So we're going to say -2 for the rise. And the run, if you count across, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like a run of 6. So over on the right, what I'm going to do is write a note now. Our slope, our M, our growth number M from y equals mx plus b, is equal to rise over run, and our rise is -2 and our run is 6, so it's equal to -2 over 6. Now fractions mean to divide, but if I divide -2 by 6, you're going to get a decimal. So I don't really want a decimal answer. I think I'd rather leave it as a fraction. I think it's simpler as a fraction, but it's not in simplest form. So let's simplify this fraction down. We can divide it by 2. If I divide by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I can reduce this down to -1/3. That's the slope of my line. That's my growth number, -1/3. So I'm going to save that off to the side, and I'm going to start working on a second line now. Now I'm thinking, let's connect E to F. So I'm going to take my ruler Oh, wait. Oh, before we do, I forgot we were going to do one more thing. We're going to write a rule for our line, an equation. Because we know that the m is negative 1/3, we already know that the y equals mx plus b would be y equals negative 1/3 x. We just don't know the plus b. So if you look really carefully at your graph, if your graph is neat and nice with a ruler, you should be able to find figure 0. Where does it cross on the y-axis? Look what I'm doing with my arrow here. I'm going to 0 and I'm going up. Where does this line cross through? Mine looks like it crosses right here, right at that point, which I think is 5. So it should be plus 5, negative 1/3 x plus 5. Look at your graph and see, does it cross through 5? Because it should. If you graphed it accurately, it should cross through that same point. Okay, now we're ready for the next line. I got carried away earlier. Now I'm going to connect E to F. So I'm going to draw an arrow and a line with my ruler through E and F. And over here on the right-hand side, we're going to be writing a note about line EF. So I'm going to write that down, line EF. Kind of color coordinating, blue for my AB line and red for my EF line. And then we're going to make our growth triangle. So I'm going to connect E to F with that triangle, and I'm going to shade it in. And then I'm going to measure that rise and run. Again, the rise over here looks like it's dropping down. I think we have another negative slope. And the run is going across like always. So here's the rise, here's the run. The rise, if you count it, looks like it's going down 2 squares. So I would still say it's a -2 rise. The run, though, if you count the units, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So it looks like we have a run of 5. So this time when we write out the slope, I'm going to put it over here on the side. My m equals rise over run is going to be m equals -2/5, down 2/5. Again, fractions mean divide, but 2 divided by 5 is a decimal. If you do it in your calculator, 2/5 is what, 0.4, -0.4? I don't want a decimal. If I could simplify the fraction, I totally would, but I think it's already simplified. So I'm going to leave -2/5 as my answer. This is another line with a negative slope. So we definitely know, okay, this line has a -2/5 slope going down 2/5. We also know for y equals mx plus b, it would have to be y equals -2/5 x, because we got that m, plus what's our b? What's our figure 0? So going to 0 here and looking at my graph, it actually looks like a negative number. It looks like right there at f at -2. So instead of plus b, I'm actually going to say -2 because it's going down to -2 here. There's my equation. Okay, we only have one line left to do, and that's going to be the line connecting C and D here. So the very final one is going to be line CD. I'm going to connect it with a purple line. We're going to write some notes over on the right for line CD. And we're going to make a growth triangle. This is the only line that looks a little different than the other two because it is pointing in the upwards direction. And when I go to make my triangle, it's going to kind of have a steep looking triangle. Let's connect this. Here's our triangle. I'm going to fill it in. Let's look at this rise and run here. This one's rising way up and running across. So rise and run. Looks like the rise goes, if you look closely at it, 1, 2, 3, 4 units up. So it's a positive 4 units up, and then it goes over 1. So we've got a 4 and a 1. So for my notes over here, my rise over run look like 4/1. And I can divide that out. 4 divided by 1 is just 4. So we can simplify that down to one number. That really helps me out. So now we know it's y equals 4x. The only part left to do is to figure out the plus b. And it looks like this could be kind of challenging to figure out. I'm going to have to backtrack this purple line all the way back on my graph until I hit this y-axis, which on my screen actually looks like it's going to be super hard for me to do that. I actually don't know if I can reach and touch the y-axis without going off the bottom of my screen down there. But you might be able to on your paper. Can you find where it crosses? Where's the intersection at the y-axis? Where's that figure 0? If you did it and tried, it's at -16. Way down at -16 if you did it right. So my rule for this line, my equation, is y equals 4x minus 16. Now, if you wanted to throw some function notation in here, you could go in and erase these y equals, all of them, and you could change them to something like f of x equals, or h of x equals, and that would be your function notation. Okay, so really just a big review in this video is I really want you to feel comfortable with rise and run and noticing when is it negative versus like when is it positive. This was a negative line. Look, this line is sloping downwards. If you were to put a ball at the top of this line, it would just roll down the hill. Same with this line, it would roll down the hill. But this is different. This line is climbing up. It's a positive slope. Very positive, and it's super steep, so look how big the slope number was. It was 4, versus the other two lines had little decimals. If you divide those are decimal slopes. They're small numbers because they're a lot flatter. So if you have a small growth number or slope number, you have a pretty flat line. But if you've got a big slope number, then that means the line is steep, really steep, either very steep in the positive direction or very steep in the negative direction. But the larger that growth number, the steeper that line. So slope is a measurement of steepness, and if I was you, I would write that down. Slope is steepness. That's a big takeaway from this video. All right, guys, that's kind of all I got for you this time. See you in the next video. Bye.